Hello everyone, and welcome again to the Bleak and Disparaging Comic Vault. I am Captain Logan.
And I'm Eric.
Today, Eric and I are finally going to chat about one of the most famous comic series of all time, and what is largely considered the best, or at least one of the best stories on Daredevil. It's Frank Miller's Born Again. I don't know how we've done 8 years on this channel, or at least I have, and have never tackled this. But finally, doing Born Again.
And you've had 2 copies of this.
I have, and had never sat down and read it cover to cover. There are bits of this I think I had sampled here and there, but the only reason I never got to it is because at one time I was reading through all of Frank Miller's Daredevil, and I was going to wait until I read that first run
and you don't
before
need
I got to this. No, you certainly don't. But I was reading that, and I just didn't want to know what happened later.
I had the first, because it's kind of a 5-part story and then the 2-part kind of nuke thing.
Because you don't need that for this, but I wouldn't want, remembering some of what I remember about the early Frank Miller stuff, I wouldn't want to read this and go back to it.
Yeah, it's totally fair. When I was a kid, I had the first part of the kind of nuke. There's kind of like, it's kind of like 5 stories in that, or a 5-parter and then a 2-parter with nuke.
Yeah.
I had the first of those 2 nuke stories.
That's weird.
As a kid. I had no idea what was happening. I did not know what to make of that book.
And not only is it informed by all these horrible things Matt Murdock has had to go through, and not only would you not know what in the world is going on with Karen Page and all of that, but also the political stuff and the drug stuff, and when you're a kid, like, how do you make heads or tails of any of that?
Yep. I remember, it felt really adult.
It is.
Like, it felt kind of boring, but I was like, I feel like I almost shouldn't be reading this.
This certainly is one of those things, and this is partly just how comics were written at this time, but this even more than some other things I've read in that period. I feel like, I almost wish I'd read this in singles, and I had the singles. I didn't pull them out for this, because, as Eric said, I happen to have 2 copies of this. I kind of wish I'd read it in singles, because when you read it all together, the recaps kind of come out and hit you in the face. I don't know if you had that with it.
There's a little bit of that. I adjust to that, like, when I'm reading older stuff. Sure,
no, I do too. But I guess I have read some things where the recaps aren't as. I guess the deal is, this is other than that, written so much like a graphic novel.
But I also think that those are really important because of the last scene of the graphic novel.
Yeah, sure. Where that repetition ends up being part of the artistry of the piece. That's
more
a fair
so than
argument,
maybe any other series from this time. I think he makes that I have to recap every issue thing work by redoing it again at the end.
And because he's Frank Miller and he likes to repeat himself a lot, and obviously with his Daredevil, he doesn't have characters repeat the same words as often. It's not as purple prosy, but he
hasn't really gotten to that point in his career yet, because Dark Knight Returns isn't as much that either.
He's a lot more straightforward at this point in his career. Yeah, well, I don't know how Ronin reads, because I've never read that. I would assume it wouldn't be like that because it's not a hard-boiled thing.
Yeah, it's not as repetitive. I mean, it's still that kind of hyper-masculine thing that he does with narration, but...
And he is already certainly... And I imagine... It's been a while since I've read any of it. I imagine his earlier run does this too, but he's got that personification of the city thing going on.
Oh, yeah.
You know, the city, and she is this, and I feel the wind, and that whole thing.
Yeah. Nope, that's all Frank.
But what I was going to say is, he does tend to reuse a lot of the same language when he's catching you up to speed about the backstory and stuff. I like that he finds... I'm not really criticizing it. I was just a little bit surprised that it recapped as much as it did. And again, things from this period do this, but this is so much more sophisticated than most of what is being written at that period that I might have expected him to try to get away from it. But he finds different points and issues to do it. It's not always the beginning.
It's usually whenever you first catch up with Matt.
That's right. And there are whole issues where he's almost missing. Like, he's always there, but there are bits where I almost forget he's even in the book, you know, and then it's like, oh yeah, we gotta catch back up with Matt, because there are points where there's pages and pages where he's just sleeping.
The introduction of Matt Murdock in every issue, I think, is fascinating. So because for the first 5 issues, we always meet him when he's sleeping. In the first issue, he's sleeping like kind of just like a normal person, like he's kind of like sleeping. In the next issue, he's kind of curled up. In the issue after that, he's in the fetal position.
And there's one where he's underwater and you think he's dead.
And then the last one, he's in like a Christ-like pose.
Oh, I didn't even pick up on that,
yeah. He's doing something with that.
So I'm going to imagine you've probably read this 45 times.
No.
Really?
This is one I've only read a couple of times.
Wow. I mean, I'm sure you've done lots of thinking and talking about this.
I once had a
material.
2-hour conversation comparing and contrasting this piece to Dark Knight Returns with someone else.
Oh, that's interesting.
Because this comes out the same year.
Does it?
Yeah, this comes out
So
the same year, 86. And of course, he's working with Mazzucchelli, who he will later work with on Year One. And I think this is a superior piece from Mazzucchelli. I think this
agree
is better
with that.
than Year One.
Although he clearly has range. Because he's not doing the same thing, but they're both gritty street level things.
Yeah.
No, that's a lot sketchier and less detailed than this. Than this. I mean, some of this is almost, it's pencil-y, but it's almost photorealistic.
Yeah. So this is not one I've gone back to a lot. I'm not really sure why. I think I always think of this as a wordier book, and so I don't go back. I don't think to go back to it that often.
It reads to me like prose with pictures. A lot of
that narration does,
and it's good narration. And I never feel like, for the most part, I never feel like it doesn't need to be there. You know, like that Iron Fist thing we read the other day, where you can just look at the pictures and get everything that's being said.
One of the most interesting things I think he does with narration is when he goes, and the man thinks, and then the next caption, we are now in the Kingpin's head, or things like that.
Yeah.
Where like he transitions.
I wasn't sure how I felt about some of that.
I don't know either.
Because again, I'm such a stickler for it staying in one POV a lot of the time, and I like that he doesn't go to a lot of thought balloons. If memory serves, I don't think there's any. I don't think there's thought balloons in this series, but he does in his captions. Jump from perspective to perspective between panels, and sometimes I think it's because he's just trying to be cinematic, right? So there are places where usually when we do it, it's not several panels. It doesn't even feel intrusive. It's almost just like just like let the rest of the page fall away and imagine that for a moment you jump to Kingpin's position where he is, and you were with him for like 5 seconds as he says something to the camera, and then we jump back. It's a stylized choice. Like it's breaking a rule, I guess. Or at least it's breaking one of my rules. I don't tend to like that, but it works. Again, partly because it's so easy to play this as a movie in your head.
Yeah, 1986 is kind of the mass exodus of thought balloons.
Oh, I thought you were going to say just like experimenting with panels and things.
Well, I mean, we certainly have a bunch of that, but I mean, 86, you have this, you have Dark Knight Returns, you have Watchmen, and something else I want to say that's big. None of these have thought balloons.
And we go to completely internal monologue.
No, so this comes out the same year as Dark Knight Returns. I think
it can just kill your sense of urgency.
Yeah. One of the things I think is interesting about this is I think it's structured similarly to Dark Knight Returns, but saying completely different things. Because much like Dark Knight Returns, Dark Knight Returns foreshadows it more, the political stuff. But it's not a really political book until you get to that last issue. That's when all of a sudden we're at war with Russia and Superman is tool the government. We're seeding that stuff earlier. It kind of comes out of nowhere here.
Well, but only sort of, because there is certainly corporate commentary throughout, and then when it gets to the patriotic villain, it's still that corporate politics, the commentary about that.
And some of that's laid on pretty thick.
And it absolutely is, sure. And it's just pulling that curtain back.
But I think it's interesting.
But I agree with you. It does sort of feel like it comes out of nowhere, and I'm switching gears and I'm thinking about things I wasn't thinking about before.
I think it's interesting. I think this and Dark Knight Returns are very interesting, and I also think this is the year. 86 is the year Frank Miller finds himself. I like his stuff before this. The Frank Miller that we will see for the rest of time starts in Born Again and Dark Knight Returns. That is really where he starts kind of becoming.
And he's also showing us the kind of range he has between those books, because, as you say, they're not only about totally different things, but they're written really differently. Like,
this is it might be stripped down compared to Dark Knight Returns, which is so bombastic.
Yeah. Sure, and just the tone of voice with a lot of those characters is totally different. I mean, like, that feels like an alternate history piece. I think it's almost easier to compare Dark Knight Returns to Watchmen than it is to compare it to this.
And that feels more, and Dark Knight Returns feels more operatic, where this feels more humanistic.
Yeah.
Which is the main reason I side with this. If I have to pick one of the two as the one I think is better.
But some of that's just personal taste, right? Because they're almost in different literary genres.
Yeah, just the human emotion and connect. I don't ever really feel or connect to Batman in Dark Knight Returns. Not like I do with Matt. you really feel the
no,
journey
this
he
is an
goes through.
epic TV miniseries, is what it is. And if you want to look at it as film, and that Dark Knight Returns, I can't almost comparing them just in that way. I almost can't imagine it on film. I mean, we've seen it on film. I'm just saying when you're just reading that book, you're right when you say opera. It almost feels like it should be on stage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's kind of where Miller's going to be for the rest of his career. He likes to go real big and broad. And this is much smaller and it's much more intimate, which is interesting because he'll do that again when he does Man of Fear, like 5 years later, where everything you read with him around that time is big and you know, Sin City is not exactly humanistic, but his Daredevil is always super character driven.
Yeah, and you know, real internal conflict.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, not that Batman doesn't have internal conflict with Dark Knight Returns, but
it's.
But all the drama is internalized.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a lot of it, or just with a couple of people in a room, and there's big like wartime action at the end of this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's some interesting things I think being said or suggested about the Marvel universe when we get to the end of it.
That's interesting.
Because
you have the Avengers for 5 seconds,
and Thor and Iron Man show up like gods, like Greek pantheon, like gods.
I really like that line where like Captain America could command a god, and he does.
Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah, and Captain America sticks around, and it kind of becomes Captain America story a little bit at the end
for a second. Yeah,
but his Captain America is so different than his Superman. I think that's fascinating.
Is Nuke somehow or rather also in the Captain America book? Because I feel like I remember covers with that character in that book.
As far as I'm aware, Nuke basically disappears until...
maybe what I'm remembering is just one of the covers here with Captain America on it and him. Because I have a lot of Captain America that I haven't read. That like maybe I just remember this as a Captain America cover. I don't know. But like I have a lot of Captain America I haven't read that's from exactly this period.
Yeah, as far as I know, Nuke basically disappears after this arc until Aaron grabs him up for Ultimate Captain America, and then Remender uses him for his Captain America run, which is a great story.
So I don't want to jump around too much because I want to get to some kind of generalized thoughts before we really dive into this and sink our teeth into it. But in case I don't think to get into it later, I have to tell you something that made me feel kind of embarrassed while I was reading it.
Okay.
There's a whole issue where I didn't realize that Nuke was popping pills. I thought he was just drawing on himself because he's like, "Give me a red," and I thought it was like a color. I thought it was like a colored pencil for at first, and I was like, "Why does he need?" And because the thing is, he either never puts it in his mouth, or I never notice him put it in his mouth. And then toward the end, when it becomes really obviously clear it has to be pills, I went back and started looking at. Oh, it was pills the whole time. I thought it was like war paint.
That's. I remember distinctly thinking that as a kid.
You thought the same thing?
When I read that one Nuke issue out of context, that's what I thought he was doing, was painting his face.
Apparently I'm a kid the first time I read something. Anyway. So, can I just real quick give you my broad strokes?
Sure.
Like, first read on this, finally sitting down and reading. And I feel really weird being a comics fan and liking Daredevil as much as I do and waiting this long to finally sit down and read Born Again. And it's one of those things where just people talk about it so much I almost felt like I'd read it, right?
Well, and you read, a couple of years ago you did Kevin Smith's Guardian Devil, which is a riff on this real hard.
Yeah. A couple of years, that was like probably 5 or 6 years ago now.
Man.
Yeah, it's been so long. Anyway, but this, like when we were, and I don't know which of these is going to go up first, but we did a video on the first volume of Ultimate Spider-Man, and I was talking about how like adaptations of Spider-Man were really blending together in my head as I read that. The movie does so much of this, and then the TV show does so much of this. With the movie, it's real superficial, a lot of it, but like, it's really strange that I never sat down and read this before because it informs everything. Obviously, I mean everybody knows that. But
yeah, there's stuff in the movie that they rip straight out of this with no context. The stuff with his mom
that makes no sense.
Makes no sense in the movie.
Well, that's only in the director's cut, but it still makes no sense.
Yeah. They shot it with... There's no context for that. You don't know that's his mom. You don't know why that scene's there.
It's really funny because in the commentary, Mark Steven Johnson talks about how he talked to Frank Miller and broke the news to him that he was going to have to cut that out. And Frank Miller was like, "You're breaking my heart." And I'm like, yeah, but if you saw it...
Yeah, if you see it as a piece, it doesn't actually work.
Yeah. It's weird. But anyway, so I wanted to give you my broad strokes on this because I don't know if what I'm going to say is going to make any sense to you.
Okay.
And I just wanted to know what I'm missing.
Okay.
So, this was an absolute...
You might have the same issue I do.
This was an absolute page-turner, and I could not stop reading it. And I do... This is going to sound awful. This is going to sound like I don't like what I do. I do, but I have... I'm reading stuff for work, I'm watching stuff for work so much that very often I have to kind of, like, sludge through it so that I can get to the next thing. And this was like just sitting down and reading something again. And when things are really good and really solid, that's the experience I didn't have with them, where I'm not thinking about all the other things I have to do today. I just lose myself in the world of the book. And it happens too rarely. And that's when you know something is just really wonderful, right? And I wish I had read it in singles, like I said, because the trade is misleading. Because when I got to the end, there was still a number of pages at the back because they left a couple of issues. They put a couple issues in that Miller and.
It's just one issue, and then it's a bunch of scripts. And
is that what it is?
Script, yeah.
But that this artist and this writer had done before together, and I didn't read that because it's not part of this.
Yeah.
But I thought it just stopped.
Really?
Yeah. Like, I expected more story. I was really surprised when it was over.
Okay.
I thought it just stopped, and I found myself so you have to be careful when you look at a thing like this that you've heard about for years and you never actually looked at, because it's really easy to look at it through the lens of, I know this is brilliant, so I'm going to find out why. It's really hard to get that out of your head and just take it on its own terms and have your own feeling and read on it. And so when I got to the end, it was very difficult to have that opinion of, I don't know, there's loose ends I wish had been tied up, and not say, okay, but I know it is objectively brilliant, so it must be fine, so now I have to go back and not figure out what my issue was with it, but figure out why I'm wrong and why it's fine. It doesn't feel like... It feels like a new status quo before it feels like a piece.
Sure. Well,
by the end, I was really surprised by that, because people always, and I said it reads like a graphic novel until the last issue, and maybe the last two, and I don't know, Eric. Like I was just sort of, I got halfway through and I went, I really hope I don't get to the end of this and Matt hasn't learned yet that Karen Page did what she did to him, and he doesn't. And I was like, oh, I don't know what to think about that.
Does he not learn?
And that's what I was going to ask you.
I assumed that he learned because he knows that she's a junkie. I thought she told him,
and maybe they just never have a conversation about it, or like he's just really understanding about it. Like, I was waiting for it, and unless I skipped over it on accident,
I thought
unless
she
I read
told him,
past
but I might
it,
be wrong.
it was a big shoe I was waiting to drop.
Okay.
There were just things like that where I was like, oh wow, and it's just over. And like I do like the fact that his world has crumbled down around him, but by the end he figures out how to pick himself up, and and he still has not much going for him except for her. Like, he doesn't have his job back, and he's still...
And that's all very important, and we have...
He's still disbarred, right? I mean,
yes.
By the end, all of that still stands.
And we have...
Kingpin did ruin him, and I love that line at the very end. Again, I'm not saying I don't like it. I wasn't sure about where we were left, but I love that line at the end where Kingpin, an internal monologue... well, actually, it's third person, but it's like, he took the law from him. That's great.
Okay, so...
Anyway.
The problem with this story, or in certain ways, a problem with this story, is everything that was done after this book.
Really?
So...
But it's weird because it seems like he's setting up the next writer for really interesting things.
Yes. So, the entire point of this book is Frank Miller going back... Well, two things. One is, after Miller left, everyone kind of... and I think it's mostly Dennis O'Neil, but they're trying to ape Miller and nobody can do it right.
Yeah.
So he is trying to end everyone doing him on Daredevil. This is supposed to be how we get back to Stanley Daredevil.
Interesting.
So,
but he's still in such a bad financial place and everything.
So, it is supposed to be deconstructing this character down to his roots, and Frank Miller's opinion is that the lawyer thing doesn't work. It doesn't actually make sense. And it is taking that away from him, and he's not supposed to be that anymore.
Oh,
when you get to the end,
so he's not supposed to get his practice back. He's supposed to go flip hamburgers.
He is supposed to go do something else.
Yeah.
When you get to the end, and it says, Matt Murdock was blinded by
why
radiation.
he stole the law from him.
Yeah. And so when you get to the last line of the book, which is like it's just a recap. It's Matt Murdock is a Matt
and that's all you need to know.
He's a blind superhero. There's nothing about being a lawyer, and that's all you need to know because that's all that's important.
Is the lawyer thing not there from the beginning?
The lawyer thing's there from the beginning, but Frank Miller has said that it's always been a contradiction. It's a problem with the character, and he talks about this.
That was a lot of what made it interesting.
He talks about this in the.
So then, in that way, this almost does work better as a piece and not as something that would continue. That's so weird. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
He talks about it a little bit in the his bit in the Daredevil documentary thing on the DVD,
right?
Where he says he looked at the character and said like, superhero lawyer thing, like that's cute, but I know you guys worked hard, but you kind of forced this one out. You kind of just threw this one out there because you needed a book for the month, and you didn't really think it through, and so this is him trying to kind of remake Daredevil into something else.
Do you agree with him?
Here's the thing.
I mean, I can see where he's coming from, but I just feel like that contradiction is part of what's so interesting about it, and really boils down some of the inherent contradiction and problem with the idea of superheroes in the first place. That like they have to try to work within a world that has rules, but they're living above them all the time. I like the idea of somebody who is literally living in both of those worlds.
But when you get to the end of this book, when you get to all the nuke stuff, I think it's putting a fine point on you can't do anything as a lawyer. The law is pointless. He doesn't need to keep doing that. I think Frank Miller specifically refers to the lawyer thing as it's a contradiction. It's a fun contradiction, but it's a contradiction.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think this is making a case that he never should have been a lawyer, but it is saying he should move past that and evolve. Well, and no one
and maybe
did
just
that.
in that's unfortunate, and maybe just in. Especially in the context of the world he's living in, where the law's not helping him.
Mm-hmm.
The law is never on his side, and Kingpin runs so much of corporate stuff and government stuff and everything that's mixed up in that.
This is supposed to be a complete reinvention of the character from the ground up, and he doesn't tell you what he's supposed to be next because that's the job of the next writer. But he makes a completely clean slate. You could take him anywhere.
Wow.
And we took him
and the next
right back to where he was, which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
And it's also why, as much
and
as...
have we ever done it? I mean, since then?
Bendis takes it away from him again, and then Brubaker gives it right back to him. It's this... No one seems to know what to do without it. And maybe a fear that, like, he's not really Daredevil without it. This is kind of an ending to this character.
Yeah.
You could view this as an ending.
Which is interesting because, like I said, when I got to the end, that's not what I saw right away.
Well, I'm just telling you what my personal...
But again, some of it was because I didn't think that there was a really important conversation that needed to happen, and I'm flipping back through this going, did I miss something? Because I don't think I did. But
and I may have just assumed it happened, filled it in between the panels. I assumed he found... I feel like he finds out. Because he certainly knows that she's a junkie, and I would think that would follow. But I might be wrong.
But just her being a junkie doesn't immediately lead to, and she gave away his identity, and that's what...
But she's been looking for him, and so I feel like that amazing sequence where they embrace in the street...
Yeah.
I feel like that's all there. Like, I mean, there's not actually a conversation.
Like the forgiveness thing?
Yeah. Because he is reborn, there's a Jesus thing going on here.
Absolutely.
I think the big thing is...
we see the baptism.
Yeah. I think the big thing is...
Death and baptism simultaneously, but yeah.
Yeah. I think it's... He knows, and he doesn't care. He forgives her. It is very much that Mary Magdalene
I'm also not
thing.
saying that that's necessarily too subtle, because maybe on a second read I would pick up on it.
Mm-hmm.
But I was anticipating a conversation, and I'm sure that clouded my expectations. But anyway. Huh.
But yeah, that's what I get from it. Some of that comes from stuff Miller said. Some of that comes from my own interpretation of the piece. Miller's never said this was meant to be an ending, but it was meant to be a reworking of the character, which we do occasionally with characters. But
well, and now that you say that, I mean, I feel like he was maybe trying to make all of the worst things you could possibly think of happen to him, so we would never do any of that again. It was like we're not gonna, and we've done it 45 times.
Yeah, we just keep doing this story.
Yeah, we keep taking him to his lowest point, and I mean that's part of why Shadowland sucks.
And
I mean it's been done better than that, but
and I love Bendis' run. It is my favorite run in comics of all time.
Yeah,
it is this story for 60 issues.
Yeah,
in a way. The biggest,
almost like an Ultimate Born Again or something.
The biggest problem that Daredevil has, especially going from Bendis to Brubaker to who does Shadowland?
It's not coming to me. It's not
Okay.
Spencer, is it?
No.
Why can't I think of his name?
It's the guy that did Green Arrow Year One and The Losers.
It'll come to us.
Any Diggle.
There it is.
Okay, so the problem with that sequence is everyone keeps doing Born Again, but doesn't do the last issue. Nobody ever put that back together. And he just had the worst day he's ever had, and the worst day he's ever had, and the worst day he's ever had. And I think that's what Wade was trying to do. I haven't read enough of that stuff to know whether I think it's effective. I think that's what he was trying. He was trying to put the pieces back together.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is it. It's weird. This book is supposed to have such an important impact on Daredevil, and I don't think it did in the way it was intended. It was supposed to reinvent this character and allow him to go anywhere he could go from this point forward.
What it really
and
did
we just kept doing this story.
I do think it kind of defined him for people, but I think the problem with that is it defined him in a story way where people almost felt like there was only one story you could tell with it.
Mm-hmm. And it was also, I think it's supposed to be an end to the Miller style of Daredevil.
Mm-hmm.
I think after this, I think that Matt Murdock at this is supposed to be the more Stan Lee swing fun, loving life character. And we just didn't take him there because this now defined what this book is going to be forever.
But at the same time, it does feel like he and Kingpin have such a massive score to settle. I mean, part of the reason that it didn't feel like an ending to me, and that I was sort of expecting more story, even like I thought I was in the second to last chapter. I think part of the reason that it felt that way was because you get to the end, and it's not until right at the end that Kingpin has finally completely taken him seriously as his arch nemesis, and that's setting up a status quo.
And I love the relationship between Daredevil and Kingpin.
No, me too.
I think it's fascinating. I love the idea that
But I love that he tries to think of him as a fly, but he is obsessed with him all the way through, and everybody around him is constantly telling him how obsessed he is. And I feel like he and Matt have parallel character arcs where Kingpin has, and it's all. It's all self-imposed by Kingpin. He's forced all this to happen, but Kingpin gets as paranoid about Daredevil as Daredevil does about Kingpin,
because he won't die.
Yeah, and it's really interesting, especially that second time. You can tell he is spooked, like when he comes out of the water.
Yeah, and there's no body.
And then whenever anybody questions him about it, he just chokes him. He chokes him out.
I love Miller's Kingpin. He's kind of. I mean, Miller defined Kingpin. He was a nobody villain before that.
Yeah.
And everything, even in Spider-Man, this is always the Kingpin we're kind of doing. But I love the idea that he's so high up. And
it is I should say a master manipulator plot that really works.
Oh, absolutely.
And you can see all the steps and it makes sense.
Yeah. But it's also a master manipulator plot where it gets away from him.
Yeah.
When you get to the end, he is no longer still manipulating it. He's just like.
He's trying to fix it.
Yeah. No, that's not working.
Yeah, by the end, it's damage control.
Yeah, he's trying to plug the dam. And I think it's such an interesting dynamic to have a villain that doesn't think the hero's a threat, and in proving that he's not a threat, he realizes that he is. And it just keeps getting worse. And by the end of it, it's all he can think about.
Yeah.
I think that's all really interesting. I can't think of many heroes and villains that have that kind of relationship.
And I also like that while it's a good master manipulation plot, it's not like he's able to see 125 steps ahead. It's just he has leverage over all these people, and so he knows how he can force them to react. And he's not guessing what you're going to do a million steps ahead.
No. The way it plays, it's mostly just in that first issue where he just aligns all the dominoes and then lets them fall.
That's it.
And I won.
He just sits back and watches on his monitors or whatever. Yeah. And what I really like about that is Daredevil thinks he's Mammon. I mean, that's what really works about it, is that he actually, and also with what, like, the nurse lady is able to do, and she's not as capable and all-powerful as she seems, and the other thugs that he has that are, and I guess not just with Matt, but also with Yurik.
Yeah.
I guess that then is Yurik, and he makes Yurik as paranoid as he made Matt.
Yeah.
But like with both of the, so I'm mixing things, but with both of those characters, you lure somebody into this trap of seeming like all-seeing and all-knowing, but you have your limitations and they can't see them because you've made them so paranoid, because you've managed to enough times make it seem like whatever you do, they always know about it. And that's the big thing with the nurse, is like, don't say his name, and then then he's like, don't even think his name with Matt Murdock. It's that you won't get this reference, but it is very much that TNG Four Lights thing with.
No, I know the Four Lights.
But you haven't actually seen
No,
it. You don't know
I
how
have
the episode ends. The point of that by the end is the evil Cardassian, Golmasset is his name, keeps telling Picard that there are only 4 lights when there are 5, and he says to Riker at the end of the episode, he got me to the point where I was seeing 4 lights, but I knew there were only 5, so I knew there were I'm sorry, I knew there were 4, but he kept telling me there were 5, and I would see 5, but I would keep saying what I knew to be the truth. There's some of that going on.
Sure. I also think it's interesting when we cut to a scene with the nurse and Kingpin, that she's also not as loyal as she seems.
Right.
She's just kind of being paid when she doesn't think she's going to get paid with
well, and eventually she like turns state's evidence and stuff. And she almost seems like but by the end of it, she almost seems remorseful about the whole thing.
She's played almost like a more nuanced version of just like a standard heavy. Like the villain always has that big, like an Odd Job type character, where it's just like there's this big imposing figure that will do anything for the villain. It's like, okay, well, they're still people. They still want to get paid for what they do. They still want to be safe, not go to prison.
I would like to see her in the Marvel shows, so that we can do an anti-Night Nurse.
Yeah,
because that's what she is.
Yeah, no, that'd be really cool.
I was thinking that the whole way through. I was like, where is Night Nurse in this story?
Night Nurse would have been helpful in this. He wouldn't have had to fall around and randomly stumble into his mom.
Yeah, he has nobody in this. Yeah, okay, let's talk about that for a minute.
Okay.
And I guess just to say, like, what do you think ultimately is the point of all of that?
I think it's faith based.
Yeah.
I think Matt Murdock is a religious character, and I think it's playing into that a little bit. I
guess some of my question throughout it, and I had this with a number of things where I feel like Miller is intentionally making you question reality. There is a character there, but is it for sure his mom? Because I think that you can make an argument that it could go either way.
I mean, everyone has always taken it as such.
I know they have, but just as I'm reading the story.
Yeah.
Again, I'm trying to get all that out of my mind.
Absolutely. I think she has to be his mom.
It's all circumstantial evidence. I mean, down to things like, it's the same cross necklace. How do you know that for sure?
No. Like, he asks, well, because he's super sensitive.
Oh, well, okay, there's that.
But also, he asks her, and she doesn't respond, but he can tell by her heartbeat. And at that
that's
point,
true. That's
and at that point, he's restored.
And he asks her, and of course she denies it, but he can tell when people are lying.
Yes.
Okay, that's definitely what it is. Yeah.
But I think it could also be a case of everything goes wrong for him, and this is the one thing that is allowed to go right. I also think she might be watching him.
It's weird.
I think she might have always been keeping tabs on him.
Yeah, and people have always said that. Is it supposed to be that, like, because it's weird. First of all, we don't get in Matt's head that much.
No.
In this. He keeps us distance from him, and I think that's on purpose. So I don't know if he has unwavering faith. I don't know if the point is supposed to be that works out because he believes in something.
But it might still be... So, Matt's mom is a nun. You can view it as divine intervention. God is working through her, or something like that. Not that there's a lot of religious connotations to this book.
I was going to say, I don't know.
I think it's important that she's a nun.
because like I'm not comfortable going any farther than Miller might be saying that it's important to believe in something greater than yourself. Because I don't see this as like a pro-Catholic or a pro-Christian message.
No, but she is a nun, and as far as I recall,
Sure.
she isn't established ever in Miller's run. Like, this is her introduction.
But that could just be people doing nice things for people. I mean, like, I don't know.
It's hard to believe when the book's called Born Again.
Yeah, that's true.
And all of the titles, or most of the titles, are religious titles.
But it's pretty easy to look at that as just it's thematically interesting or thematically clever. Like,
sure. Yeah, no.
Like,
that's totally
you
possible.
use those motifs and you use that.
I could see an argument that it's too convenient or too contrived.
Well, I wondered about that myself, and the only thing that works is if she's been following him around.
Mm-hmm. Which I want to say there's a page. It's when he falls like right before her. Yeah, they're saved.
Yeah, sure.
It's when he falls at her feet where she's. I love that page.
Yeah. I think the most compelling stuff in the book for me is the Uric stuff.
I think that's totally fair. This one.
And some of that is also because I have So some of that for me later, that's the part where she's leaning over him on what is that, like on a street or
Yeah, I think he just collapses in the street. I think.
But anyways, no, I think some of the reason the Uric stuff resonated with me is because that character's resonated with me before, in other things that obviously, once again, were really influenced by this. I mean, I love Ben Uric in Marvels, and I love Ben Uric in End of Days. Which is effectively like almost Bendis's Born Again. Not that it's this story again, but just that it's him coming back and wrapping up his stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the same thing,
and obviously this is a big inspiration on Uric in the Daredevil miniseries.
Of course, yeah.
Or the Netflix series.
Yeah, the only difference is that time he does get whacked, and it is a similar situation.
Mm-hmm.
Where like he's got a story and the Kingpin's trying to quelch it. I mean, it's that.
I like how human Uric is.
Yeah.
I like that he is
that phone scene is one of the tensest things I've ever read.
Yeah. I like that he is the genuine hard-hitting journalist that believes in telling the story, and even he's taken to a place where he's scared of it and he's not going to do it, and he's able to overcome that.
Yeah.
He also goes through a journey just like Matt, where he kind of gets broken.
Yeah, I guess the main theme of this, of course, is overcoming fear, which is obviously really appropriate with Daredevil. But I like that it happens with multiple characters, and you get that with Karen Page, and you get that with. I think really Foggy Nelson is the only character that doesn't have to deal with that as much.
Yeah, and I want to ask you how you feel about Foggy in this.
He seems like he's just sort of the Rock. I mean, it seems like that's kind of his role to play. Although one thing that's interesting is I kind of like that he is the only character for whom everything is going right. Pretty much. Like, he doesn't deal with anything except his friends in trouble. I mean, it's pretty much just go help bail out your friends in trouble, but nothing bad ever happens to him in this.
No, he ends up with Matt's girl.
Yeah.
Which I'm not sure how I feel about, or
I
what
thought
it's
that
saying.
was really interesting, but I don't have a read on it yet.
I mean, that kind of things, those kind of things happen, espespally in an intense situation like that. I think that
was another thing
where they're drawn together.
Where by the end, I would have liked to have known how Matt felt about that, and we never again, because we're distancing ourselves from him, and he never has a conversation with Foggy again. There's a bit. Speaking of Foggy, I want to ask you about this because I don't know if I'm right about it. They're in the church, and they end up all in the same place, where that's where Karen is, and that's where the Scottish girlfriend is. I'm assuming she's Scottish.
She's
her accent,
clearly Scottish. Yeah.
So anyway, she is.
I think she's got red hair.
If she says "sure" and something one more time, but anyway, she. So they're like all in the same place. Foggy walks past Matt like 5 times and never recognizes him, and I didn't understand why, because he just looks like Matt. Like,
he's got a beard.
Is that all it is?
I think so.
Did he have a beard?
Yeah, he has a beard
that
through this
scene?
whole book.
Oh, okay. All right.
It's a big deal when he shaves. You just saw him shaving.
I guess so. Yeah, but that's all.
I think this is that issue that doesn't count.
Oh, is it? Okay.
think so,
Oh, yeah,
yeah.
you're right. I'm in that issue that doesn't count now. Well, it looks like the rest of it. It's the same artist. Okay. Well, that may explain it. That's cool. I just wondered about it.
I
'cause
also
was
like Matt with a beard. I mean, if you really easy to tell who Daredevil is, but I like Matt with a beard.
Yeah. That's true. It would be really easy to tell who Daredevil is. There's a point you made to me the other day, but yeah, okay, he's got a beard, but it's not like super bushy or anything. It's still up against his face, like.
Yeah.
Anyway, so and
it can also be that V from Vendetta thing.
Again,
like,
that's a nitpick. I was like I'm not even criticizing it. I was wondering if I was looking at that wrong. Like he does walk past him, right?
Yeah. No, well, I also think it could be that V from Vendetta thing where like he's so broken, he's so changed as a person that people that saw him every day can't recognize him.
Yeah.
And there's also possibly something being said
Well, and I like
about,
that idea. I just wasn't sure if that's what it was supposed to be.
and there could also maybe be something being said about how we view the homeless.
This is very dense, and I want to ask more questions than I try to answer them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, looking at this.
Yeah.
But anyway,
you're going somewhere.
I know I was, and I can't remember.
Sorry.
No problem at all. Well, we were just talking about Foggy, and we were just kind of trying to decide how we felt about the girlfriend switch and all of that.
Well, and I think there's also a possible interpretation that...
What I really liked about it, though, can I say this really quick?
Mm-hmm.
What I really liked about the Scottish girlfriend thing was we get the same voice on the answer machine in the Daredevil movie, and it's just the one in a number of girls breaking up with Matt Murdock. I didn't expect to see her and that she would turn into a character and that she would end up being like a photographer for the newspaper. Like I liked that she was wrapped up in all this and mattered. And when nothing's going bad for Foggy, even she has bad things happen to her. She got her apartment broken into and everything got busted.
Well, I think it's...
Even the pictures, and who would do such a thing?
I think it's possible that there could
Sure, and who would do such a thing?
There could be some kind of read about how Matt brings this stuff to him and to the people close to him.
Yeah.
And so once Matt's no longer around Foggy's life is great.
Yeah.
Once he doesn't have to deal with Daredevil anymore, it's wonderful.
But what's interesting about it is...
I mean, that didn't happen to Karen
it's
Page,
still
but...
coming... Yeah, some of that stuff is still coming to him anyway, though, because he affected her, the old girlfriend.
Well,
I suppose.
she's a photographer. She's kind of involved in that world a bit.
Just regardless of Matt. Yeah, that's true. I'm so used to lately a fed up Foggy Nelson that wants nothing to do with Matt Murdock that this was just refreshing.
Yeah.
To get back to their actually being friends again.
Yeah, I like when they're friends.
And I just thought strung out Karen Page was fascinating.
Yeah.
I mean, I really liked that choice, and I liked that he got... I mean, this seems to be what this book is about. Get characters to places where you can't imagine that they'll ever come back from it, and he's taking huge risks in keeping characters sympathetic. Where like, I could have hated her. I didn't. I mean, like, she's the impetus for all of this. I mean, like, he should have died 5 times because of her, right? And I still care about her at the end, and I'm so glad things work out for her.
And it's also potentially...
She also has to pay for that 100-fold.
She's also potentially risky because she is a Stanley girlfriend, who we tend to leave alone.
Sure.
And I think the last time anyone saw her, she moves to LA, and she's like a radio broadcast personality, like something. Like, she's in a good place last time we see her.
Oh,
I think. So this is all just him being like, yeah, that's not how that went.
I also like some of the subtleties in Miller's writing where I have to read between the lines.
Did you ever think he'd say that?
No, I didn't. Isn't that amazing? That's the thing is, I don't think of myself as a Miller fan, and then I go back and I read something like this, and I'm like, oh yeah, no, he's wonderful when he's wonderful. And again, the man's got legs. I mean, this and Sin City are like in 2 totally different corners of the universe.
But they're both crime
but still
stories.
Of crime, hard-boiled detective things. Fascinating. I mean, that's not all detective, but you know what I mean. Yeah. Street-level noir-ish.
Yeah.
Hard-boiled, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Dripping with, testosterone.
Yeah.
Now, I do think you can describe nearly everything Miller's ever written that way. I think nearly everything he's ever written you could describe as dripping with testosterone.
It's all very masculine.
Yeah.
Although I've never read Martha Washington. I don't know if that is. Which is it's a series he did with Dave Gibbons in the 90s.
And he doesn't write female protagonists, so.
Well, I mean, he created Elektra. And he wrote some minis with her.
Right,
stuff.
but he. Oh, okay. I didn't realize that he actually wrote any of those.
Yeah, Elektra lives.
Okay, but she's living in a hypermasculine world. Like, she might be a woman,
yeah,
but
it's true.
That stuff is still hypermasculine.
It's like Miho or Gay.
Yeah, and you can write hypermasculine stories that are starring women because they live in that world.
It's true.
And you might be making a statement about, how they cope living in a man's world or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I'm digressing massively. Where were we? What was I? Oh, just that. Okay, so subtleties in Miller's writing here. Yeah, I know. Let's all just bask in the fact that describes this book at all. That's amazing. One of the things I was, and I'm impressed with it because ultimately, for the most part, I know what's going on, but I have to think about it a little bit, and there's not. There were one or two places where I thought there was maybe a little bit of exposition and dialogue. It almost never happens. Mm-hmm. And he does things like early on, that first scene with Karen Page and that guy in that apartment that she hands off the information to, and then he takes it to someone else that takes it to the Kingpin. She's talking about they're talking about her being in movies, and it took me a couple of chapters before I realized that we were saying she was a porn star. It took me a while to figure that out. Mm-hmm. But I liked that it took time to figure that out because if you, and maybe some people get that right away, but if you don't, she's not in as bad of a place as you thought she was. Mm-hmm. It almost feels like just like that Hollywood starlet thing that like you fell off and you were doing really great for a while, but then now you have nothing to fall back on but your body, and so then you get into like a prostitution world. Mm-hmm. No, she started there, and it took me a while to realize that. Mm-hmm. Not in prostitution. I know there's a difference between being in pornographic films and being a prostitute, but she starts in that seedy, selling yourself rather than actually acting plays. Mm-hmm. It took me at least 2 chapters to realize that.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. Well, and then she meets that guy whose name I can't remember, but he's like, oh, I'm a big fan of your movies.
The thing in the train station was mortifying.
Thing in the train station.
Yeah, just the subtlety, yeah, of what the caption box does there, and then later he's basically like owning her like a slave.
Oh yeah.
So they're in the train station, and she's supposed to, they're supposed to break off, mm-hmm. and like he gets her,
and she kisses him goodbye.
He gets her there. I think it's a train station. I forget wherever it is.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And she kisses her, but it's not just she kisses him goodbye. It's that's his final payment, mm-hmm. and it says
she's slowly been sleeping with him,
right? And then and they made it really clear early on that that's what was going to happen and what the payment was going to be, because she said, "I'll do anything, I don't care." Mm-hmm. The last caption there is, "And it wasn't enough for him." Mm-hmm. And then you see them back at the apartment, and now he's a monster, and he wasn't a monster before, and now he's a monster. Mm-hmm. I don't know. That whole thing was just mortifying. And, I mean, yeah, maybe that character's not totally fully drawn, and I don't know where he comes from, I don't know anything about that guy, but it all felt real while I was reading it.
Yeah. No, I think it's really powerful. I think it's one of...
That's the best word. It is just chilling through and through, and I could not stop reading it.
I think it's one of the best things Miller's ever written. I think it's one of his most powerful pieces. There's something about Miller on Daredevil. I'm convinced if Miller came back and wrote Daredevil tomorrow, it would not look like anything he's written in 30 years. There's something about when he writes... Because he's into Sin City when he does Man Without Fear, and it doesn't feel like Sin City. And he's not able to do that with anything else.
So you think he probably wouldn't go back to his old staple of really super stylized heightened speech and...
Yeah, I don't think he would. He seems to have an affinity for Matt that he doesn't have for Batman.
Would you agree with this? Because you've read more of him than me. He never gets more grounded than Daredevil.
I agree completely.
And I don't think he ever writes anything as grounded as Daredevil. I don't think anything he's ever done is as grounded as Daredevil.
No.
So I'm sorry. What is Man Without Fear? So there's even another thing he does after this.
After this, in I believe it's 93 or 94.
Oh yes, okay.
Him and Romita Jr., which is my favorite Romita Jr. of all time, they do a Daredevil origin story. They do Daredevil.
It's an origin.
It's an origin.
Okay.
And I
flashed to a cover, and suddenly I was like, oh, that's what that is, but I didn't know what it was.
Oh, there's some beautiful covers to that.
Wow. I'll have to check and see if I have that.
I have it. If you don't, I have it.
But I'd like to know if I have it in singles.
Well, and it's a four issue prestige miniseries.
Okay.
So it's not part of the numbering. This is part of the numbering. It's not part of the numbering.
Right.
But it's him doing like a Batman Year One for Daredevil, and I think it's better than Batman Year One. I think it's wonderful. And there's a lot of it in the Netflix series. And that's where he has the black costume. He's running around in that black costume. He's got a Netflix series that comes from.
That's where that comes.
Yeah,
from.
that comes from. Well, it also comes from the Hulk TV movie, which we forgot to do.
Oh, when Dan was here, we just didn't get around to it. We'll have to try to do that at some point. And by the way, I should mention, I regret that Dan's not here for this. This was one of the things that we read for Dan's visit, and we didn't get to it. I didn't get a chance to finish reading it, so that is all my fault. But we talked to Dan. He was totally cool. That's doing it without him. But I hate him not being here to talk about it with us.
So let's talk about the last two issues.
Real quick before we do that, because can we just mention a couple of things that this gives the Netflix shows, because I think it's kind of cool. Turk is in this.
Well, Turk is in his original run too.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Is he really? Okay.
Turk,
I didn't remember that.
There is a point where he steals the Stiltman suit and tries to fight Daredevil.
Really?
Stiltman. It's amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah, Miller wrote that. Miller wrote Turk as Stiltman.
And also, Nuke is in Jessica Jones, and he's a totally different character.
This is also where Wesley comes from, who's in both the Netflix
But
series
he's
and the
not
movie.
in the previous run?
No.
He starts here?
As far as I'm aware.
Oh, that's really interesting.
He also
Does
talks...
he show up again after this anywhere? I mean, I think
No,
maybe
he dies
he's
in
been...
this, doesn't he?
Well, I know, but that doesn't stop people, you know.
Yeah. He also talks like, you know those two guys in Sin City where they like over-talk?
Yeah.
He talks like them.
Yeah. And it's obnoxious.
Yeah, it's really obnoxious.
Intentionally obnoxious.
It's really obnoxious.
And he says did or does everything. Like, he did go there. Yeah. He's really irritating.
And
but I think that plays as comic relief to some degree. Because I think Miller is struggling for levity, and I think it totally works. Like, I like some levity, obviously, in often a really relentless thing like this. Somehow or rather, this does not require it.
Yeah, no, it's because it's so engrossing.
Yeah.
And
I'm almost reveling in the mortifying nature of it in a way.
Yeah. It just, I don't know.
It wraps you up in it. It's like Cloak and Dagger. She wraps you up in it.
And it has not happened yet. This will be a season of the Daredevil Netflix.
It has to. But I feel like so far they're building to where they could easily do it.
Absolutely.
And then I would love to see a season where he's not a lawyer, but they probably won't do that.
Yeah, that's true.
Now that you say that.
This is also, I think, really, really important to talk about that while we do this all the time now, the idea that we have like 5 straight issues without Daredevil.
Yeah. Without the costume.
Without the costume is kind of nuts.
It's also interesting that we have... and the guy that builds the costume is also in the Netflix show.
Yes, he's Gladiator.
Gladiator, yeah.
I can never remember. It's oh man, I know his name, but I can't remember it off the top of my head.
And he's also an old felon in this.
Because in Daredevil's or in Miller's original run, that is where he reforms.
Okay.
And
so
we find out he has like a
building
mental
on
condition.
quite a bit of that.
Yeah.
But I also
not in the way that you need it.
I also think it's interesting, and this is a part where Kingpin does something stupid. This is Kingpin legitimately being an idiot, I think. But he
gets a crazy guy to be Daredevil?
What an idiot. What is wrong with you? What did you think was going to happen? He's like, okay, now you go in there and you go to that apartment, you just start saying the apartment number, and he just bashes the guy's head in?
That's how Wesley dies.
Yeah, was that
That's
Wesley? I will say there are a couple places where where I'm not quite recognizing characters.
Okay.
I do have that problem with this book. I'm sure. I mean, obviously, multiple viewings or readings, I wouldn't. But anyway, I do think it's interesting to your point about not having the costume so long. And when we when we finally do get a Daredevil costume, it's the one he makes and then puts on that, and then that crazy guy wears before we ever have Daredevil in costume.
And that's kind of Kingpin. It's that.
So we have a perversion of it.
Nothing's. It's never enough kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Where. Matt Murdock's on the street as a bum. Like, he doesn't know that he's dead, he doesn't know that he's not dead, right? But like, or he doesn't know. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying?
You mean Kingpin doesn't know if he's dead or not?
Yeah,
is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Kingpin doesn't know if he is dead or not
because there's no body.
Yeah. And I guess he doesn't know that he's a bum on the street, but like, he's not running around. There was no reason for Kingpin to then go and try to defame. Like, he's not done beating that guy. He has to then go and I'm gonna make a crazy guy be Daredevil and everyone's gonna hate Daredevil, even though Daredevil's not even hanging around anymore.
Yeah, he might be dead. But that way I'm just, and he's beating a dead horse at that point. And again, that's the conflicted nature of where he is right then, where he's telling everyone, no, I'm fine, I don't have any problem with this, but in his head he's obsessed. I love that. The problem with it is not that he makes someone be Daredevil, it's that it's a crazy person, and that he's dumb enough to not expect that guy to go off the rails the way he does.
And just immediately.
Right away. And he just says the apartment number over and over again, which I just want to be 14B. It's not, but in my head, he's just going around going, 14B, 14B.
Let's talk about the last two issues.
Yeah.
Where we get very political and we also get into the Marvel Universe. We're very detached from the Marvel Universe into the last two issues when the big three show up. Iron Man gets one line of dialogue, Thor gets none. Captain America sticks around, and I think Miller's vision of Captain America is fascinating.
Yeah.
When he has that conversation where Captain America basically defines himself in a way that I wish more people... Like, I'm not going to say this is a definitive piece on Captain America, but...
It makes you want to see Miller write that character, though.
I want to say he was supposed to at some point. I want to say at some point he was supposed to do a miniseries. But when that guy says...
Because you wouldn't immediately think he would be right for that character.
Yeah.
And then you read this, and you're like... And then this makes me go, okay, no, Miller on Superman could work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, this is Miller a bazillion years ago. And I don't know now.
And his Superman is very different than his Captain America.
Sure.
Or at least the way he uses Superman in Dark Knight.
That particular version of it from Batman's lens, as you always say, which I completely agree with, but I just mean patriotic, optimistic, believes in the tenets of what the Founding Fathers meant for the country. He gets all that.
The most important scene I think here, and maybe is my definitive scene for Captain America.
Are you going to say, I'm loyal to the dream and
loyal
nothing
to the
else?
dream.
Yeah.
Nothing else.
Oh, God, that's great.
When he goes, aren't you loyal to the country? And he says, I'm loyal to the dream and nothing else. That's Captain America.
Yeah.
That's how I feel. That's what I think is Captain America.
And that, also, it just makes sense, right? Like, that's how you get a Captain America that doesn't just toe the state line.
And it's also how you get a Captain America who doesn't wallow in the imperfections of the country.
Sure.
And can still dress in that costume after Watergate or something like that, or Vietnam.
But that's also how that guy could be a superhero, because superheroes, as I said earlier, often end up, or was this even before we were recording? I don't remember now. But superheroes often end up taking the law into their own hands, and that version of it's really easy to think of Captain America as just a soldier and he just follows orders.
And he calls him the soldier.
Yeah.
But he's more than that. Or he's more complex than that. No, I think what he does with him is very interesting, and how he plays with it. When Captain America shows up with Thor and Iron Man, they're so far above and so far removed from Daredevil's world, and I think there's something really being said there, both with what Miller's saying about the government corporations, and that idea.
Yeah, the whole free market speech that Kingpin has to Nuke is really interesting.
Yeah.
And obviously he's just trying to bait that guy and get him to do what he wants to. But I also think there's some truth in to him in what he's saying, like what he really believes in, and what he's preaching sounds almost kind of anarchistic to me.
But yeah, I it's interesting because the last two issues get so political. But again, compared to something like Dark Knight Returns, it's really subtle. It's really subtle for Miller.
It does come kind of out of nowhere. I have a hard time understanding where the idea of suddenly having an evil flagman comes from in this story.
Yeah,
this evil flagman. Okay, I mean, I did like the line where Daredevil's like, what is your beef in this? Like, why are you here? And he's like, he's wearing the flag. I hadn't noticed. I like that whole... Yeah, no, that's great. Because, of course, Daredevil wouldn't have noticed. He's blind. No, that's wonderful. That's a great... And so talking. Daredevil, sometimes one of his big limitations is he doesn't always understand the implications and motivations of characters, because we live in a world where we wear our motivations and our feelings literally on our sleeves and our costumes. And if Daredevil doesn't know what you look like, how would he know? Yeah.
Well, and I think there's also a thing, maybe, that Daredevil's apolitical. That's not important to him. He was a bad guy doing something. What his motivations were didn't matter.
Yeah, but what's interesting is arguably Captain America's position in this is also kind of apolitical. Like when he says the dream and nothing else. I mean, like if you believe on the bedrock of what the country was built on, and then you have multiple political views and multiple political parties, but the one thing we can all agree on is what the dream is, well, then his position is also apolitical, and Matt's is simply blind justice. It's simply right is always right, and I believe in the rule of law, and those two things go hand in hand.
But maybe
because the law is about pursuit of happiness, and that makes sure that you can get to the dream.
But Matt's not about the law anymore at the end of this book.
That's true.
He is about blind justice. He is about... that's the reason we bring all of that in.
That's the thing. He still believes in everything he always used to, but he's realizing that the law doesn't work anymore. Like the law doesn't matter, because look how easy it was for Kingpin to use it for his own ends. And I mean, it's about corruption, certainly.
Maybe the point of bringing that in at the end and is really just, and when we get really on the nose is a negative term, but when we get really direct about...
I don't think Daredevil changes at all. I don't think Matt actually really changes. I think he endures.
I think he has kind of a wake up call, kind of a moment.
Well, okay, he does, but what I mean by he doesn't change is I don't think he's changed his core beliefs.
No,
I don't think his values are the same.
I don't think so either, but I think his worldview may have shifted.
Yeah, his
I
understanding of the world.
Yeah,
he's less naive.
Yeah, I think maybe the whole thing with Kingpin and Nuke, when we get really direct with the corporate corruption and all of that and the intermingling, is we're taking Daredevil away from all of that.
Yeah.
He's no longer gonna worry about, is just about stopping bad guys. That's all that's important, is righting wrong. I think. I don't
What
know.
career would you put him in after this? Bus driver?
Yeah. School bus driver? That'd go well. I don't know.
Yeah. Airline pilot.
Bike messenger.
Billiards player. Well, we know he can play pool.
That's true. No, and he's clearly not staying as fry cook. Like, he's clearly supposed to go do something else.
Right.
Short order cook. Fry cook's real. He's above that. He's a short order cook.
It can't be that thing that inevitably it seems like TV shows like to always try to do with heroes. They're going to do this with Supergirl this season, it looks like, where they're going to only be the superhero all the time and not and not
that's
and you can't
not
do that
that's...
well, also it's just practically this is a really grounded
and Daredevil
book.
has done that, I believe.
Okay, but practically, he has to make money somehow to live. He's in New York, it's expensive. You know what I mean? Like, it is a more grounded book where you have to think about those things, unless he's just mooshing off of somebody.
I also like the idea that Matt that Matt's superpowers make him a good cook. Like that's not...
Are we stuck on this cook thing now?
No. I think it's exploring, like, you don't have...
Does he cook in this?
Yeah, he's flipping burgers and stuff, and he's like, take them off in like 30 seconds.
Oh, I forgot all about that. Yeah, he does do that.
His powers aren't just helpful for punching people in the face.
Right.
There are
his
other ways
powers,
he can use
more
his
than
powers.
so many other superpowers. It's just about the way you perceive the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they would help you in every walk of life.
And I think maybe that's why he becomes that. Is like because
it's just about your senses.
It's just pointing, going like, yeah, but he can do other things. Like his abilities could aid him in other careers.
He's subtly making an argument about that.
Yeah, maybe
it's a good argument.
The question is always made with Miller. I never know what's intentional and what's just him throwing things at the wall.
Okay, but then just look at the piece. The piece does it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Most assuredly. Now all I'm going to do the rest of the night is just think of other jobs that Matt Murdock can have,
Birdwatcher.
Probably not anything in a movie theater. I wouldn't think,
Sign language
He'd
translator.
Be real bored,
He'd be a signer for somebody. How you doing that? Don't ask questions. I said something real offensive just now. I don't know what it was, but it was something.
That's a problem, too, because his senses would help him so much in regular everyday life, but would he want people to know what he could do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, something else. Something else.
Well, the guy that runs the restaurant never asks.
Yeah, that one you could maybe get away with more than some other things. But like, if you somehow rather could tell what could like sign like that, it's like, how are you doing that? Something I meant to mention earlier about Kingpin. I'm glad I thought of this. Is I love that while Kingpin knows his secret identity, he never has it all figured out. Kingpin never knows he's really blind. He thinks that he's faking it.
Yeah, that's immediately what he jumps to. So I just
and I'm assuming he thinks that all the way through. There's no way he would ever fully know it.
Yeah.
I was really surprised that they have that big fight as early as they do, and because Miller is making me question reality, I wasn't sure that wasn't in Matt's head until he was drowned.
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of people have that when they first read this. Like he's drowned, and then it's a cliffhanger, and I'm like, oh, he must be actually drowned. And we go to Kingpin's perspective without him for a minute, I think. What are you looking for?
Something that while we were discussing, I just realized, or I thought I realized. I wanted to double down and make sure. Okay.
Yeah.
So Matt has sunglasses because Matt obviously always wears sunglasses.
Yeah.
He stops doing it.
Yeah.
When he comes back, he never wears the sunglasses again.
Oh, that's interesting.
Because he's looking through his real eyes and that kind of symbolic
right
thing.
Of course. It's some symbolic something. Yeah. You read the book. You'll understand.
You'll get it. But no, I think the unfortunate thing about this book is I don't think it's like Dark Knight Returns. I don't think it's like Watchmen. I don't think this is remembered as being a seminal comic book. I think this is remembered as being...
Is it? No, it is.
You think
right?
so?
I feel like this is all anybody ever brings up with Daredevil.
That's my point. I think it's remembered as the seminal Daredevil story.
Okay,
it doesn't come up outside of Daredevil. When people talk about the greatest comic books of all time, this one doesn't come up unless we're specifically having a conversation about Daredevil. I think this is just as good as the other things that came out in '86.
And it should, because I mean, again, I guess I am still putting this in Daredevil terms when I say this, but like, I never bothered to actually go back and read this, and then when I read this, I go, oh, okay, this is why I like Daredevil. But it's not just because it's a Daredevil story. I mean, you should be able to hand this to other people. I
think this reads as a self-contained piece.
Mostly, I'm agreeing with you, and you're making some great points, and that's why I'm glad I brought that up, because I didn't think I would agree with myself and when I got to the end. But, you have to look at it as part of the greater whole in order to appreciate the notion that the point of the ending is, and now anyone is supposed to take it and go anywhere they want to with it. In that way, it's not a self-contained thing. Like it is, but if you just hand this to somebody that's never read Daredevil, they're not going to be thinking about it as a serialized piece that keeps going. And it only works as an ending if you think about what comes after it. And my problem was I couldn't imagine Miller not continuing with it until you brought up the idea that the point is supposed to be that he's not supposed to be a lawyer anymore.
But I don't,
which I didn't fully pick up on. I thought it was just an interesting status quo plays.
I don't think that you necessarily need anything after this. I
agree with that, but I wonder if if some people might have what I had and get to the end and go, that's it.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's a really good ending that doesn't need more. It's just...
But how much of that comes from your knowledge already of the character and the man writing it?
Maybe a lot. I don't know. I can't answer that question.
It's just, I needed you to bring that to me before I understood that.
Sure.
And I wonder if other people wouldn't have that. Is all I'm saying. I'm not even saying that it's not in the piece, but I think I would need a second or third read before I really understood what the point of the ending was. As far as the character on the whole.
One thing I want to talk about real quick, because I should have brought it up earlier and I kept forgetting to, but I want to talk about it for a minute.
Yeah.
I love when Matt starts going crazy.
Yeah.
How paranoid he gets and how anxiety-ridden. And it's one of those things where, like, it's relatable enough that can hit home. Like, I can only speak for myself. I cannot speak for you. I've never been there. I've never been that crazy. But it is that paranoia where you're like, it's something as simple as, are they mad at me? Are these people talking behind my back? Like, that real simple human, everyone has this paranoia.
Yeah, where you're so in your head that you're seeing reality differently than how it is. And then when you actually sit down and you talk to someone, you realize just how far out of touch you got.
Yeah, and so I like that I think it's grounded in something we can all understand. It's not... He's not crazy. He's not talking about penguins carrying flowers to elephants, or like something that makes no sense.
But he's being brought to his lowest point. You understand why he would think that Foggy is against him.
Yeah.
And
I love when he calls him. He's just like, I know, and he hangs up.
Yeah, and then I like that he doesn't even actually call him. He never actually goes to him.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Because then a couple scenes after that, you get Foggy and his girlfriend sitting around going, when's he gonna call?
But yeah,
in that moment, I mean, again questioning reality. I didn't know how crazy he was. Now, I didn't need the caption boxes telling me how crazy he was. I didn't care for that as much, because once more of that started cropping up, I was like, oh, I don't get to like read what's happening. And there's a little bit of that where it gets a little overwritten in that way, where it's just overstated. And again, I don't think that's a massive issue all the way through it, but in those places where I'm supposed to be, I don't know, almost both in his head and distance. What I mean is, like, we're in his head, but we don't know what it means. Don't then tell me what it means. Like, I think part of the, I think you've got kind of like a confused sense of what the point of the caption boxes are. It's sometimes caption boxes, even up to this point in comics, it felt like they were just there because something else was supposed to be on the page.
Yeah.
And for the most part, we don't have that problem with this book, but there are places like that where I'm like, get it off the page. And then there are places where it is real visually driven, and he doesn't do the Claremont thing where he's constantly telling you what is happening in a scene, but he does sometimes overstate what characters are thinking and feeling when I can see it on their face.
Sure.
And in their actions.
Yeah, that's totally,
that's all
fair. Yeah. But, I think it's a wonderful book.
It is a wonderful book.
I think it's a must-read.
I imagine I will read it many times.
I mean, obviously, if you're a Daredevil fan,
I don't know why I waited as long as I did. Again, it was because I wanted to finish Miller, and I never did that.
Well, and if you ever want to go through that stuff, I'd love to go through that stuff.
It'd be great.
I love that stuff.
Do you have it? Because I have a lot of it in singles. But
I have it in. Yeah, I've got it. I've got all of it.
I'm missing one here and there, so
I've got it in two trades.
But I do have Death of the Ledger. I do have the big key issues, and I have a lot of the not key issues.
I think it's also important that Bullseye's not here. Just Frank Miller kind of makes that character, and he's not here.
And it's interesting that Elektra's never mentioned.
That's true, because it's not important to the story. It's not about Matt.
Yeah.
And that happened a couple of years ago, and that's done. But especially given where he leaves Matt, because if I remember correctly, he leaves Matt real sad about Elektra. Like, I think that's his last issue. Is the whole resurrection of Elektra thing. But that's neither here nor there. But if you like Daredevil, especially like Daredevil Netflix show, and you've not read Daredevil comics, like I think this is obviously the best Daredevil story, or regarded as one of the best Daredevil stories. It should be read. But I also think, just in general, this is one of the seminal superhero comic books.
Yeah, I think so too. Well, everybody, thanks a lot for watching. Sure appreciate it. We will see you again with another one shortly. I am Captain Logan.
And I am Eric.
Happy reading, folks.